Hi there, Andy Jones here, and I'm really excited to talk to you about Platform SSO today. This is something we've been waiting for some time, with Apple and Microsoft working together to provide a synchronized authentication onto your Mac devices and into your applications. Now, there's already a lot of information published on this topic, so I'm not going to repeat all that. But what I do think is worthwhile doing is looking at the context for SSO. We've got the Apple Enterprise SSO, we've got the Microsoft Enterprise SSO, we've got the SSO app extension, and now we've got the Platform SSO. So let's take a look at this before we configure it and see it working. So over on the Microsoft website, there's a lot of information here and a number of pages of details. But basically on this page, you're going to see that it shows the Microsoft Enterprise SSO plugin is a feature in the Microsoft Entra that provides single sign-on features for Apple devices. Now, to use the Microsoft Enterprise SSO plugin for Apple devices, the device must support and have an installed app that has the Enterprise SSO plugin. So with iOS and iPad OS devices, this is the Authenticator app. For Mac devices, this is the company portal. And as you can see here, it's saying that you've got, for iOS and iPad, Enterprise SSO plugin includes the SSO app extension. For Mac devices, it includes Platform SSO and SSO app extension. So basically, the Platform SSO is targeted specifically at the Mac devices. It's an extension of this Enterprise SSO from Microsoft, and the Apple Enterprise SSO framework ensures that only an approved SSO plugin can work with each identity provider. So the two have to work in unison, they work together, and the Microsoft Enterprise SSO is relying on that Apple framework in order to function. So when we look at Platform SSO specifically, which is for Mac OS, these are the benefits, okay? It includes the app extension, so you don't need to configure the SSO app extension separately, although you can do if you just want that functionality. Now be aware, if you already have the app extension deployed to your devices, you're going to need to uninstall that, because in this process with Platform SSO, when you configure it, it actually configures all the functionality, including the app extension. So you don't want to duplicate that and get conflicts. You're going to get passwordless with phishing resistant credentials that are hardware bound on the Mac device. And obviously the single sign-on experience is greatly improved, right? Because you're going to be able to log on with your Windows credentials, almost like a Windows Hello for Business experience on your Mac device. And ultimately that's going to minimize the number of times users need to enter their credentials and log on to the resources, okay? As it says here, helps reduce the number of passwords users need to remember. Now, the big difference between Platform SSO and the app extension is that Platform SSO uses the settings catalog. Again, if you've previously deployed the SSO app extension, you would have used a features template in order to do that. Now this is all rolled up into a settings catalog, and we'll see that when we configure it. In terms of prerequisites, you're going to need to have a Mac with Mac OS 13 or newer, and there are additional features when you go to 14. We'll see that in a minute, but you also need the company portal. This is the conduit really between the Apple Enterprise SSO framework and Microsoft or Entra ID in order to communicate the SSO credentials. You can use or you'll need to use supported web browsers, right? There's the list there. And be aware, obviously, in order to create the policies, you will need to log on with the right credentials. So take note of that as well. So probably one of the most important decisions you're going to make in configuring Platform SSO is deciding the authentication method. And in this scenario, you've got three options. You've got Secure Enclave, which effectively is like a Windows Hello for Business type scenario where you're going to create a hardware bound cryptographic key that is stored on your Mac. So this is passwordless, right? Which is why Microsoft recommends it. So it's not going to use your Entra ID user account here. It's purely going to use this cryptographic key. The second option you got is password. So with password, this is where you're going to be able to log on to your Mac device using your Entra ID and credentials. Now, at the same time, what it's going to do is replace the password or the local account on your device. So that needs to be there, and it keeps them in sync. So for situations whereby, for example, it needs to deal with the Apple file vault disk encryption, it will use that local account and password in order to do that. Okay, but the actual experience for logging on is going to take your Entra ID credentials. The last option here is smart card. So this might be an option that you want to take and use within your organization, but basically it's going to give you that authentication method, right, where you can use the smart card certificate and associated PIN to sign into the device and authenticate to apps and websites. Now, obviously, this is considered a passwordless, and it will leave the local account username and password as is, as it says there. So before we get into the configuration, I've just hopped into the Apple website here just to give you an insight on the SSO features in macOS 14. Now there is a difference, and when we come to configure the settings catalog, you'll see that there are some legacy settings which you can within the same policy configure both for version 13 and 14 at the same time. But these are the version 14's added features that you get. So you've got user enrollment with registration status and system settings. So you can go into the system settings of your Mac device and actually do the registration there. And you're also going to get some, the status and indicates any errors that may have occurred. One of the key ones really for me is the local account creation by users. So this allows you to create that local account for your users on the device. So you got that additional setting within the settings catalog in order to do that, and it also supports the smart card deployment there. So those smart cards that registered with your identity provider. You've also got this using non-local identity provider user accounts, authorization prompts. You've got updating group membership of users when they authenticate. And you've got the associated kind of administrator groups and group settings that kind of build into that. So have a look at those. I'll add that to the description, and they are important because you need to kind of relate that to your estate that you're deploying to. So let's have a look at how we configure this within our Intune admin center. So I've hopped into my own tenant here. What we're going to do is we're going to go into devices. We're going to select the Mac OS option, and then we're going to select configuration profiles. Now I already have a policy already set, so I'm going to go into that to explain, but I'll go through the details of the settings. So obviously you're going to need to set up the basics, give it a name, description, and select the platform as Mac OS. We'll come back to the assignments, but basically you can assign those to your user groups depending, what devices you deploy to your end users. The core to this configuration though is the configuration settings. So we'll go into the edit of those, and in here you can see I've got some authentication settings that I've already added. But if I go into add settings, I'll show you where they are. So you go into the settings picker. If you type in extensible and hit the search, you've got some options here. Okay, so this is the option you need to pick, the extensible single sign-on SSO, and if you click that you're going to get the options appear. So as you can see, there's some that I haven't actually enabled, so I've picked the ones that I need specifically as a basis for Platform SSO, but I've also added some additionals in here too. So you're going to need the extensible identifier. If you expand the Platform SSO, I've added in the account display name. It's optional. We'll go through the meanings of some of these. Authentication method, enable create user logon, new user authorization mode, etc. But I've also got some additionals at the bottom here which you will need. So go ahead and select those as per my options there, and then you can close this settings picker. You'll get the settings appear on the page, and then we can go through basically identifying what these are. So working from the top then, if we look at the extension identifier, this is fairly critical really, because this is setting use to specify the new identifier for the SSO extension used for the organization, right? And is typically provided by the identity provider here, which is in this case is Microsoft. Now, because obviously we're using the company portal as a conduit in this this framework, that's why it's got the company portal Mac association in there. Moving down to the platform SSO, you've got account display name. Now this is optional, but basically when you're prompted to set this up initially, you want to kind of inform the user that where this prompt is coming from. So you can put your display name in there and you'll see it appear when the end user is prompted. This third setting, authentication method, again is critical. We did go through the options, and if I have a look, you've got password, secure enclave and smart card, right? Now I'm going to pick password here because it's a good experience, regardless of the fact that Microsoft do recommend the secure enclave key. I'm going to use password because it gives you that good experience to see how the SSO framework is working. Right, so moving down then to enable create user at login. So with this setting, effectively when a user authenticates using their credentials there, in this case the Microsoft credentials, macOS can automatically create a new local user account. This means that when a user logs in for the first time with their enterprise credentials, a corresponding local account is created on the device. So that's what that setting does. With this new setting, new user authorization mode, what this is, the new user authorization mode sets the permissions as a one-time, as it says there in the description. The settings affect the permissions for the accounts created at logon. So this is a one-time setting for where, and is linked obviously to this enable create user at logon setting. With this next setting, use shared device keys, basically this is used in environments where multiple users share a single device really, but also for user created during logon, the system is going to prompt them to initiate the registration once reaching the desktop. So in contrast to the new user authorization mode, we've got the user authorization mode. And in this scenario, basically once the user's logged on for the first time and the account's been created, this setting determines the level of access and permissions they have on an ongoing basis. So essentially we set this to standard, and which means they don't have the admin rights. And I've done exactly the same here. For the ongoing basis, I'm going to set the user as standard as well. When it comes to the registration token, this token is used by the device for the authentication against the identity provider, and is specifically different depending on the identity provider and used for the silent registration. You can see here that we've got device registration, so it's taking this as a variable as part of that process. For screen lock behavior, you've only got one option in here, right? At the moment, that's the only option available. And what this is basically is going to be used to determine how the SSO process handles when a user screen is locked. And when the setting is set to do not handle, this effectively means that the user will need to manually enter their credentials to unlock the screen. So with team identifier, the team identifier is basically a setting is used to specify the unique identifier for the organization. So this is assigned by Apple to the organization. So it's a set setting. If I go over to the Microsoft documentation, you can see here that they've got these settings for extension ID and team ID. And this is something you just literally copy and paste into your profile. So we're now down to the last couple of options here. We've got type and URL. So in the type field, we've got two options here. We've got redirect and credential. So redirect is effectively referring to the type of modern authentication protocol. So redirect supports the OpenID Connect, OAuth and SAML too, and basically relates to the way SSO authentication works and passes on that authentication to the resources. And lastly, we've got the URLs. So these are standard. These need to be included as part of the configuration. Essentially, they're URL prefixes that are identity providers to do the SSO app extensions. So that completes our configuration here. Then obviously you want to then go and assign this to your users. You may want to do that to a test environment first, but let's go ahead and see this working. Okay, so let's set the scene here. Rather than go for a brand new Mac device where we're going to go from the out-of-box experience, I've already got a Mac device which is a virtual machine. As you can see from the left here, I've got Control Center. This is running parallel, so we've set this up, this new virtual machine, and basically I've downloaded the company portal, and what I'm going to do is go through, I'm going to enroll this into Intune with the management profile, and then we're going to go and register it with Platform SSO. So let's see the steps as we go through this. So first of all, I'm going to hit the continue, I'm going to agree, I'm going to go through the installation, and it's prompted us for our user. Now, just to highlight, the local account on this device is the same name as the person I'm going to enroll with my enterprise credentials, but the password is different. So the password for logging on locally is different, and what we're going to see are two prompts. So it's going to change our local account password to synchronize with our Microsoft Entra ID credentials. So we log on with our local account password. Installation was successful, so we close that, and basically we're going to run the application. So we're going to sign in, and what this should do is register and download our management profile. So I need to put my enterprise credentials in here, hit the next, put in the password, sign in. It's going to go through MFAs, and then it's going to go through the setup. So we're going to hit the begin, hit the continue, and we have to download a management profile to get started. So this should download onto our Mac, and I'll have to go into settings as I do here, and basically I need to approve these settings. Okay, so I install those. It's prompted me for my local account password, and I'll enroll it. So that was successful. You can see there, if I double click that, I'm going to get the management profile that you can see. It's downloaded from my Intune tenant. I can now go back to the company portal now, and you can see it's installing the management profile still onto my device. At the same time, in the background, this user has been assigned to my Platform SSO profile, so I should automatically get these profiles and all the settings that is aligned to this user down to my device. Now, if I go into this additional setting, this is where you can see, this is where the Platform SSO profile has been downloaded. You can see I've got all the redirect, the URLs there, and it's all the authentication method of password, which you saw during the setup, as well as the display name for M2M Corp, for example. So that's the profile, and it's giving me an error here because basically I need to register with this. Okay, at the top right hand corner here, I've got this register required. So if you remember, we set the display name, which is why it's telling us it's coming from our corporation, right? So use your M2M corporate password to log into your Mac. And that's where we're going to do now. So we're going to register with that. It's prompted me for my local account password. So I put that in and hit OK. It's now going to go ahead and start registering the device with Entra. In order to do that, it needs to synchronize in line with my enterprise credentials. So automatically it's picked up with the log on to the company portal what that is. So it's picked my account up. So I can select that, enter my password for the first time. So we hit the sign in. It's going to go through MFA again. And at this point, once it's recognized and authenticated me, it's going to synchronize my account with my local account on my Mac device. So that was successful. It's now telling me it's preparing my device, and after it's all complete, I should be able to log on with my password. Please sign into the corp. So this time it's asking for my credentials from my enterprise account. I hit the sign in, and you can see at the top it's saying my account has been synchronized with my M2M corp application, corp account, which is great. Now I'm going to hit the retry here and see if it completes the process. And there you have it. It's saying it's all done. So we can now go and check this within a local device here. If I go into users and groups, I've got my local account admin there. If I hit the information link there, I can see that we've got a registration. We've got a method with PS Platform SSO. So I've got a registration required, and that's green. I've got a token. Okay, so it's received a token from Entra ID for authentication. I've got my log on with my corporate account, and this is now synchronized with my local account. It needs this local account to remain because it does certain things like unlock file vault, for example. So I'll hit the OK there. The other thing I can do is if I bring up a terminal here, I can see whether this has been applied. So if I put in this command of app SSO platform -s, it's going to give me information back. Automatically you can see SSO's tokens been received, but if I go up to the top here, it's going to give me all the details relating to platform SSO deploying down to my device, and this links up to the profile that we've configured. So you can check through that as a way of verifying that this has come through. Now you can see in the background I've got applications that's been assigned to a particular user, an Entra ID user, and they're in the background are being downloaded and installed on this device. So we're going to check those in a minute because they're Office 365 apps, but for the time being I'm going to close this down and I'm just going to log out or lock this screen. Now if you remember, that was a configuration within the profile. Previously, when I logged on with Megan Bowen here, I had a local account. This time I need to log on with my Entra ID password. So let's put that in. So we enter that and hit the arrow key, and there you have it. It's basically logged on with my Entra ID password. So now they're synchronized. It's giving me that seamless experience on getting onto my desktop, and we can now test this with the application. So if I go into applications, I can see that I've got some Office apps downloaded. Let's go into, let's go into Word. Now, the first time one of these applications starts up, I am going to need to put my account in. After that, it should then remember that and cache that and basically use that for accessing the other applications. So let's give this a go. So I'll hit the next, and it's remembered that password and automatically gone through to MFA. So I'll approve that sign in, and it's approved that it's activating, and it's gone straight into Microsoft Word. So that's using my Entra ID account. Now we can try this again, and let's go into, say, Excel. And this time there's no prompt. Okay, so we've got single sign-on working as it should. We've got Megan Bowen at the top there, and it's logged us straight in. Okay, just to finish up here, we pop back into the Intune Admin Center, and I'm going to go into devices, have a look at my Mac devices. I can see I've got my Megan Virtual Mac there, right? So I can see that it's managed, it's Microsoft Entra joined, and if I go into that device, have a quick look at the configuration policies, just to have a look of our SSO settings. So there's our policy, look at that, and we can see all the different individual settings within that policy are succeeded. So that's just to kind of verify from an Intune perspective. So thanks very much for hanging in on this video. I'm really excited to see where Apple and Microsoft take this going forward. Maybe it's tweaks or new features. Remember, this is currently in preview, but go ahead and test it. Have a look at the Somesh Pathak website and blog. He's got some great knowledge around these features and the technology, and he'll go into a deep dive for you if that's what you need. Certainly go and test it for yourself, and hopefully you'll be able to understand how, as I try to explain, how Platform SSO fits into the overall single sign-on framework. But for now, thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.